wondering how I got into this mix.
Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and today I'm excited. We're going to talk to a very interesting person, someone I've known for a few years now, a very powerful activist out there doing good work, the founder of People Against the NDAA. Of course, the NDAA was the military budget, annual budget passed, though, in 2011, including a provision that allowed for indefinite detention of American citizens. And Daniel and the PANDAA did a lot of good work fighting it around the country. He's also the founder of the Solutions Institute, which helped a lot of different activists in a number of different ways get trained to work in their communities. We're going to hear more about that. And now he's working with We Do Better. How are you doing, Daniel?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me on.
So one of the things I enjoy about your activism is that you started with PANDAA and you started with Solutions Institute, and you're really a good activist. But for me, sometimes it felt like almost a wasted effort because a lot of your energy was going towards working within the government system, working within politics, and spending all your energy that way. And now, recently, you've told me you've kind of come to the understanding that politics is not really where change is going to be found, and so you're shifting your efforts. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, it started out, like you said, with the civil liberties activism, defending people's right to a trial against the 2012 National Defense Authorization Act. And then, applying those skills to a broader level was the Solutions Institute, an activist training center. We trained about 70 or 75 activist organizations how to manipulate the political system, if you will, to get more liberty and get more freedom in their area. And eventually move from that to taxes and from that to We Do Better, because at the end of the day, we are not going to find our answers by going through a political system where the only way we win is if the other guy loses. And it took us a little bit to figure that out. But as we've developed and kind of evolved into We Do Better, it really is the premise that we the people already do a better job. So why do we constantly ask politicians to do it for us?
No, I really appreciate that. And for me, this has been part of my activism recently to talk about how we can think holistically in our approach. Because what I've found is, first, as activists, we step into this role, this awareness of that there are injustices taking place and there are, destruction of the environment or loss of civil liberties or whatever your issue may be. And then after a period of time, you get to a place where you decide that you know who is responsible for these things, who to place your blame on, who are the institutions and the people who you can hold accountable for this, and you focus all your energy on that, and not always so much in looking at what we the people are capable of doing or what we are already doing in many cases, and how people are already taking care of themselves. And that's what I appreciate about your efforts now, and as you're moving towards We Do Better. So let's hear more about what it's all about and what you guys have already been working on.
Sure. Well, you're out of Houston, so you're very familiar, I would say, with the Cajun Navy and the efforts that they did down there during Hurricane Harvey. Are you somewhat familiar with them?
Yep.
So the Cajun Navy. Most people know that the Coast Guard and FEMA, they come in to rescue people after disasters. But what they don't know is that a group of about 1,000 people with boats and GPS actually rescued over 6,000 people during Hurricane Harvey. The U.S. Coast Guard did not rescue that many people, and the U.S. Coast Guard had 100 times the resources of the Cajun Navy. And there are many examples out there in your community of either organizations that are taking on things in the public that government is not, organizations that are providing similar services that are doing a better job, that Cajun Navy is just one example of. But the principle and the point of We Do Better is, first of all, to recognize that of the public services that we rely on every day, the vast majority of them are provided by we the people. Whether we're doing that through organizations, whether we're doing that through companies, whether we're doing that through informal groups, they are, in fact, provided by we the people. And the second thing is to understand that the only thing holding us back from taking care of ourselves and not needing the government to come in, which it's not that the government necessarily is such a problem. It's that there's a fundamental flaw in funding the government, which is that the results that any government agency delivers are not tied to the resources that come in. If FEMA does a bad job in Houston, they get the exact same amount of tax money next year as if they did a good job. So there's no incentive to provide good services for people, to provide cheap services for people, or what have you. And that is a fundamental flaw. It exists in every government program. It exists in anything that government does. And so when we look at that, we go, well, we the people provide very similar services in Cajun Navy, in the example of FEMA or Detroit Threat Management Center when it comes to police, or Christian Healthcare Ministries when it comes to healthcare. We provide so many of these similar services, and yet we actually have to earn the money. Our results are tied to the resources that come in, and so we're delivering a better service for people. So there's an empirical reason why we the people do better. We the people already do better. And our mission is not just to show people, look at these options, just open your eyes and look in your community at the people providing services to each other, but also that you should be able to take your dollars that you put your blood, your sweat, and your tears in. You should be able to put those toward the organizations, your tax dollars, the organizations that provide the best services in your community. You shouldn't have to always put your tax dollars toward government if government is not providing the best services that your community needs, or the services your community needs at all.
Well, let's talk a little the idea of the people being able to redirect their resources to a station, or even say a part of government that they are more comfortable with, that they feel that they feel more inclined to support, as opposed to having tax dollars go to the war, to surveillance, or things that they might not support. Where have we seen examples of that, and have they been successful?
Sure. So I think the best way to answer that is actually to go back to the history of taxes. I don't mean the history of income tax. I don't mean the history of taxes in the U.S. I mean the very history, the purpose of taxes in the first place. And you go back to the first recorded civilization, the ancient Sumerians. And the reason the ancient Sumerians instituted a tax was because they were in war. And the idea is, well, everybody needs to put their money in this collective pot, and we can force you to do that, because if we don't, we all die. And over time, taxes began to be expanded beyond wars and to services for people, and to welfare, and to all of these different areas, that taxation began to be looked at as, this is the system by which we take care of each other collectively. This is the system by which we put all our money in to solve collective problems. Well, if that's the case, if taxation is truly that system that we have for millennia put our money together to solve problems, then wouldn't it make sense that the organizations that are solving problems the best get the money? And about 20 years ago in Arizona, some legislators and some people thought this would be a good idea, and they instituted the Arizona Charitable Credit. And what this does is it allows anyone in Arizona to redirect up to $200 of their tax dollars to any organization that serves the poor. And that was successful enough that right before last year, 130,000 Arizonans sent $36 million to organizations that serve people in their communities. And the next year, last year, they doubled it to $400 per person. So not only have we seen the impact, we've seen domestic violence shelters, now they can take in more people, not just because they have extra money, but because that money doesn't come with certain strings that they talk about on our website, wedobetter.org. But we've had home assistance programs. There was Habitat for Humanity built wheelchair ramps for people using money from this credit. Really, these organizations that are already serving the community are now able to do so because the people in that community are able to support them even more with their tax dollars. And that's something we'd like to see all around the country.
What would you say to those who believe that if the people are given a choice in where their tax dollars go, then only wealthy areas of town will, schools will receive funding, while the areas of town where there's more poverty or more income inequality, areas will suffer? Have you received any pushback in that area?
We've received a little bit of pushback in the area, though the Arizona credit's been around for 20 years and that hasn't happened. We received a little bit of pushback in the area, but the response to that is actually really simple. First of all, everyone pays taxes. Whether or not you pay sales tax on the things that you buy, whether or not you pay income tax or you pay corporate income tax, or you pay fines and fees, or you get a ticket on the side of the road. At a certain point, everyone pays taxes, and everyone will then have a voice, so to speak, in the system. But secondly, it's really the current system that harms those disadvantaged people more. If you look at how much money is going to what schools and the achievement rates of the schools, it's not the poor schools in the ghetto that are turning out A-plus students and sending them to college. Our current school system works where the government decides where your tax dollars go, and how well has that worked? In a lot of places, it just hasn't. And giving people the option to say, in our current system, people are disadvantaged because while if you're wealthy, you can buy a lobbyist and have him go, tell the politician how to spend the money. If you're not wealthy, you don't have any influence whatsoever over what government spends, but you could if you had this charitable credit. I think that people would start to look at it less as, the wealthy could get control, and more of today, those very wealthy have control, and this actually hands that power back to the people.
That's awesome. Great idea. And I want to get some more into now as we start to wrap up, though. Let's talk about, you've talked about having the We Do Better teams or coordinating with different activists and groups around the country or really around the globe to go to specific areas and focus their energy and efforts. Talk often about what I call freedom cells, decentralized mutual aid groups, community groups coming together for a common purpose, including rendering aid in emergency situations and support of each other in times of need. So let's talk a bit about that. How do you see these concepts coming together, or what would the role be of a We Do Better team going out there into the community?
So what we'd like to see right now is we'd like to see people in their community say, you know what? I want, A, the power back in the people's hands, but B, I think that we should be able to send our resources and we should be able to support those organizations that provide the best for our community, that we, the people, do better. And what we would ask those people to do is, first of all, to reach out to organizations. We have a list of organizations in your community. You start out by reaching out to 5 organizations that provide excellent services in your community and get to know them. And then you build a coalition of those organizations, and you get the tax credit passed. It should take some neighborhood of 3 to 6 months for a local area, or about a year for a state. And really what you're doing is you're, for the first time, actually empowering your community to make real decisions as to where not only their dollars go, but where they get their services from, rather than leaving that in the hands of politicians. And we've also seen, we aren't just coming up with this model because we think this is a great model and, it would help a lot of people. We're actually living it. Our organization is working in the Be Strong Global Better group in Miami. We have delivered several million, about 3 million pounds of aid to Puerto Rico so far, and we've gathered millions more pounds of disaster relief to Puerto Rico. We've tangled with the government, who's directly responsible, I would say, for the deaths of several hundred people on that island, and really proving, not just to everyone else there, but to people around the world, that it was and it is the nonprofits providing direct action to Puerto Rico. They saved lives. And if they have the money and they have the resources to save more lives, then you won't see another funeral of some man, some patriarch of a family in Puerto Rico who could have been saved if it was a nonprofit that had $3 billion and not FEMA.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Daniel, for joining us today and for all this important information. How do people get in touch with you guys and get involved in your future projects?
People can step up in their communities at wedobetter.org. That is, we, the people, do a better job providing services than the government. wedobetter.org. You can sign up there and support the efforts.
Awesome. Thank you, Daniel, for joining us today. And thank you guys for listening. Be sure to check out We Do Better and get involved These are the kind of solutions that are actually going to achieve change. It's not going to come from voting or waiting for politicians or some leader to come take care of your responsibilities. It's going to happen the moment we each decide to take personal responsibility for our actions, and then from there start helping each other where we can. So thank you guys for listening. Remember, you are powerful, beautiful, and you are free.